Welcome to Ghosted, Gagged, and Gay, the podcast where queer love stories get the spotlight they deserve, served with a side of laughs and a whole lot of heart. I'm your host, Lone, a queer relationship coach and rapid transformational therapy practitioner on a mission to help LGBTQ plus people stop repeating the same dating patterns and start writing new love stories. Because let's be honest, if your love life feels like deja vu, it's probably not just bad luck, it's your subconscious doing the same dance. Through my 10-week Radiant Hearts transformation program, I help amazing humans uncover the roots of those patterns and build the relationships they truly crave. If that sparks something in you, feel free to book a free call with me. But today, we are here for connection, storytelling, and maybe even a little healing. So let's dive right in. Today's guest is Skylar McManus. He is the author of the LGBTQ plus graphic novel Essence and a co-host of Mentally Tapped Out. It's a podcast where neurodivergent chaos meets real talk. When Skylar's not creating queer superhero stories, he works as an agile coach, helping teams thrive through collaboration and clarity. Whether it's comic books, mental health, or nerdy deep dives, Skylar brings heart, humor, and a bit of structured spontaneity to every conversation. Welcome, Skylar.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm glad that you're here too. So Skylar, your work beautifully blends queerness, creativity, and neurodivergence, three things that are rarely given the space they deserve together. Let's start with this. What's one belief about love or relationships that you feel queer or neurodivergent people are taught to internalize, and what helped you start unlearning it?
So one thing that I have noticed, and unfortunately, it's just everywhere, but a lot of the relationships come in tragedy when you look at queer history, queer stories, and so internalizing that, you always assume that your relationship is going to end in tragedy, which becomes self-sabotage in most cases. And that one I think is really hard to look outside of the box and say, this is not all relationships. But because we've seen that in society, or we've seen that in stories, or we've seen that just in any form of relationship, like, situations, that's what we believe.
Mhm.
So being able to like step out of that and say, tell yourself, I can love without being tragic, or I can find somebody to love me without it ending in tragedy.
Yeah, and that's probably like, do you feel this, like, where do you feel this belief came from? Like, oh, this is gonna end either way. This is gonna be done. It's gonna end tragically. Like, where do you think this is coming from? I have an idea, but I want to hear your perspective first.
I think that it is how we have been perceived in the LGBTQ community for most of the part. That's my belief, but I would love to hear your like because you probably have way more expertise on this, and I would love to hear like your side and what you believe on this.
So from my side, like the clients that I worked with, some of them they also they were neurodivergent, and what I realized is that yeah, like as you said, like growing up, they were always perceived like as too much, and they kind of acquired this belief like, oh yeah, like nobody's gonna like me, and then it stays on with them until like into their adult life. And that also comes up in dating. And then yeah, like as you said, then the self-sabotage comes because they're trying to protect their heart, because they know, okay, it's gonna end anyway, so let me, ruin it from like before anything happens, before I get abandoned or something. So do you feel that actually makes sense to you?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, and for a neurotypical person, I'm unsure, but for me being ADHD, there's always a voice in my head that is self-sabotaging.
Mm-hmm.
That's always saying you're not good enough, or you're going to fail this or it's not going to be successful. So when it comes to relationships, 100%, that is a huge part of, I can see as to why a relationship would fail and tragically because you have that self-sabotaging voice in your head.
Okay, and like what helped you kind of start like unlearning that? Like where are you in the process at the moment and what helped you so far?
So for me, it was I did a little bit of behavioral therapy to kind of understand like the anxieties behind it and why that voice is there. Obviously, it's a lot of it is neurodivergency, a lot of it is that ADHD part of me, but it's something that can be squished, so to speak. Like it doesn't have to be the loudest voice in your head. It can be a quiet one. And the way that I've, learned is don't underestimate yourself, but also like you have to make yourself feel safe too. So by not underestimating yourself, you're not going to constantly sabotage yourself and say you're not good enough. And then you're going to step into that. I'm safe with myself. I can feel safe within myself now to be able to take that step to go on a date or to find somebody or just anything, in that situation.
Okay, and yeah, thank you for sharing that. Do you feel like so like how did you come to this like discovery and how did how did you come to the point where you're like, oh, I need to do something about it? And like when did you like have this awareness of like, oh, this is something I can work on?
It was actually after I was diagnosed with ADHD, and it was probably a little bit before that. During COVID, I think a lot of people probably experienced this, but I already have anxiety, but my anxiety like amplified through that. And that right there was just, I was tired of having so much anxiety. I would have panic attacks just randomly. And a lot of that came back to that self sabotage or that voice constantly telling me I'm not good enough. I'm gonna fail. It's not gonna end well. So I decided that I'm tired of feeling this panic all the time or this this dread of life, and I don't want to be held back from the things I want to do in life because that voice is telling me I'm not good enough.
Okay, okay. Um, and and you felt like the support that you received so far like definitely helped you into the right going into the right direction, like being comfortable in your own skin.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Um, Now, like I know it sounds like a jumping topics, but actually, not really. Like I know about your like graphic novel Essence, which centers queer superheroes. Can you tell us a little bit about your about Essence at first? Yeah.
Yeah, so essence is something I've had in my mind for a very long time, and it comes back to being neurodivergent. Until I was diagnosed with ADHD and I got the help that I needed, I wasn't able to actually get it out, like do any of it. I would sit down to do it, and then, I would lose it. I'm just hyperactive all the time, so I would just lose it in an instant. So, but it's always been something that's been in my mind, and the reason I decided on Essence a long time ago is because when I was growing up, I didn't have something that I could relate to that I could call a hero. Being gay growing up in a small town in America was, there's nothing that you can say that's the hero I want. And we all, as children, need heroes.
True.
So I wanted to create a character that could be a hero to a community that is completely overlooked all the time. And so Essence was born in that.
Oh wow, that quite impressive. I would actually like to, yeah, maybe you can send me a link
Yeah,
to that, yeah, so I can like also add it for everybody who wants to check it out because I would actually be into checking it out too. Um, so yeah, like how much actually of your own journey, like I mean, you said that growing up and so on, but like are there any like is there any relevance between like your own journey or relationship experiences that are also like reflected in the characters in essence?
I would say probably journey through life. Yes, the as I continue the story, there are a lot of reflections from like my own relationships, and just how the treatment from the outside world perspective was, and still sometimes is. So there's some hate that happens, and so there's some journey from that part. Seeing the perspective of how somebody could be completely disrespectful to people that are just in love.
Yeah, you're right, actually. Do you have like, would you like to share, do you have like a specific experience that was like kind of truly like a turning point in your dating life or relationship life that you were like, okay, no, I need to really first work on myself and accept myself and understand myself before so I can communicate properly to like other people like about my needs and my wants and who I am so that like you stop this like as you said like the repeating patterns of like self-sabotage and so on.
So I would probably say when I was much younger, when I was probably 16, that's when I first started dating. It didn't end well, and always when we first have, our first love or our first, relationship, that one's really hard to understand and come back from. But being very young, growing up in a very small town, and the time period, it's really hard to find somebody else, right? It's very hard to find another person to connect with, a part of your same community. But for me, it was I don't want to jump into something immediately and it completely fail. Like that self sabotage was going to happen, and at that point, I even then understood that I don't want to self sabotage myself. Because it's not going to be the easiest to date again. Like it's still, very new to me, and I'm new to the community. I just like freshly come out, and so it was. I don't want to jump in too quickly, and I don't want to make mistakes and self sabotage myself that way too, where I've made a mistake and now my that inner saboteur can use it against me.
Okay, like if you make one mistake, you kind of immediately assume, okay, this is over, it's done,
Yeah.
like there's no going back. Okay, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, like actually wanted to also say, like like I know you're also like a co-host of Mentally Tapped Out, which is the podcast I mentioned earlier. And this podcast for like the listeners, it's a podcast that dives into neurodivergence, but with a raw and funny lens. So how do you think neurodivergence shows up in the way we love, the way we communicate, or even the way we self-sabotage in queer relationships?
So that one's a hard one because I am married, and my husband is also ADHD. So
Okay.
having two neurodivergents in a relationship, communication was hard for a while because we couldn't actually directly communicate what we needed, or we would misunderstand it.
Okay.
So that was a rough one, and that neurodivergent played a huge role in it.
And how did it show up? Like, as you said, there was like a problem in communicating. So it was just like very vague communication, or how did it show up for you?
For me, it was little things like it was vague communication, but it was also almost like to the point of like you felt like you weren't being heard. And then it was on the same side, my husband, it was the same thing. And it was just the way we communicated because of the neurodivergency and being ADHD. We weren't expressing ourselves the way we needed to, or the way each other needed us to. Like, so I wasn't doing it the way he needed me to. So we ended up like actually coming to the understanding of how we have to communicate. And so we've like gotten way better at understanding each other's needs in those situations where we need those needs understood. I'm probably a little bit more chaotic than he is, and sometimes we'll have emotional outbursts just randomly, and so he's amazing at being able to handle those and not freak out and like want to run away.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, like neurodivergent or not, there's always somebody who's more chaotic in a relationship.
That is very true.
Yeah. So how did you actually work on that? Like what works for you guys, if I may ask? Like maybe it will inspire somebody who's listening to this.
So for a long time we thought it wasn't going to be like talking, like we almost like couldn't talk to each other because I have this thing that a lot of neurodivergent people have, and it's called I call it the justice gene, and the justice gene means like everything has to be equal, right? But in my eyes, what equal is completely different to like somebody like you, what is equal, or somebody else, and so that was a huge part of our miscommunication is I felt like it wasn't equal. Like he would get to talk and I would want to talk. And of course, we're ADHD, we interrupt each other, but then, he would interrupt me and I'd feel like I wasn't heard and it's unfair. And so a lot of it was stopping, understanding like the situation and saying, this isn't about not being equal. This is about hearing the person you love and letting them talk. So
Ah,
that was
okay.
massive for us.
Ah, okay, okay. So kind of like going really, like kind of really analyzing what, or like in the moment, communicating what you're feeling, like during the communication, which is about a completely different topic, but kind of taking a pause and then saying, okay, now I feel this. We need to clear this up first before we continue this topic, like talking about this topic. Is that the way?
Yeah, yeah. And that's really hard because I'm the type of person that I have to talk about what just happened. Like if we were in a fight or something, I have to talk about it right then and there. Where he's the type of person where it's I need to step away and analyze and then we can talk. And I had to learn to adjust myself to be able to do that because and he did it vice versa. There were times where he would, if we had a fight, it was he would be there and talk in the moment. But if it got too chaotic, he wanted to step away. And so I had to teach myself, okay, he wants to step away. It's not because he doesn't want to talk, it's because he has to analyze the situation, understand what I'm saying, and I need to do the same.
Ah, okay, okay. So kind of like really keeping the lines of the communication like super transparent, like
Yeah,
no matter how silly it is, so that you don't take things personally, like directly, or as you said, like the justice gene doesn't get triggered immediately.
exactly. Yeah. And that way, it's understood from both parties that, it's fair. We're actually doing communication the way we both would understand it. Like, he's sticking around for the conversation because that's what I need. And then I'm stepping away when he steps away because that's what he needs. So understanding what each other's needs are and actually taking action on that.
That's actually quite amazing. Yeah. Like I feel like it's always a good way um like in any kind of situation, right? Like when you're having an argument and like there are people like different people have different needs, the way they want to go through the argument. Some people, yeah, they want to step out a little bit of it
Yeah.
to think and then come back to it. And some people they cannot, they don't have the patience. They have to like go at it right now. And it's like good to know, like have like a certain dynamics to know, okay, when to compromise and from
Yeah.
which side. So sometimes you are compromising and some other times he's compromising.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people, well, at least like that I've talked to and stuff, sometimes it's hard for people to understand compromise. And when they hear the term compromise, they're like, well, why am I doing it? It's not just you. There's compromise happening on both sides. And to fully understand that is going to break down a lot of those communication barriers where you're having that issue because, um, you know, relationships are so like, I think they're so important. I've been married for, um, since like 2012, but we've been together for 18 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so like being able to communicate on all the different levels that we've had to and try the different things. It's hard, but you do it for the person that you love, right? Like, I wouldn't have it any other way. I love him to death, and he's the most amazing person and like my soulmate. So, of course, I would do anything whether change my communication style or compromise or whatever it needs to be to make sure that we're on a good note or not in a bad place.
Yeah, that's actually quite inspiring. Maybe I want to like record it in another episode with you just about your relationship story because 18 years, I feel like these days it's something not very common to, hear like, oh, we've been together for 18 years.
Yeah, I've noticed that, and I mean, I was very young. We got together when I was 17, so it's been a long time, but yeah, we're still in love with each other every day. Like, even just the little things that you do together is amazing.
And especially in those like four like kind of years of like going from the teenage life to like adulthood, there's like a lot of big shifts that happens in our personalities during
Yeah.
those ages, like the from 17 to maybe 30. I feel like this age has a lot of like changes that go on. So it's amazing that how you two guys like you kind of communicated this change and you didn't let it kind of like split you apart basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think I want to do another episode with you about
Okay,
that.
absolutely. I'm more than happy to come back on.
Yeah, and in your day job, like you help teams collaborate and thrive, kind of like to kind of keep them on time, keep them structured. Um, But like, what about personal relationships? What have you learned about navigating love and connection as someone who thrives on structure, but also lives with this creative chaos, let's call it?
So that one's a hard one. Like the connection, as far as love, like, that one's covered. The person I love, I've been with for so long. But creating like just a personal relationship or a friendship, that friend that you love, or even family,
Yeah.
is probably one of the hardest things outside of like that structure. Like, in my career, I'm very structured. I love the structure. In my personal life, we get that creative chaos where everything's just very chaotic, and so it's having those two, like I want those two to combine where I have maybe the structured chaos, but it's never going to happen because I'm too afraid of those two crossing the line with each other at the same time.
Okay.
Being neurodivergent and having this chaos, that structure is very important to have. And especially in your career, if you can't be structured in your career and be able to, help I help teams, I help them collaborate, I help them do the things that they need to do. If I'm not there to help them, I'm not doing my job. And if I can't be on time or do this or, have this structure, it I can't have a job, right? There's no way that I can have the job that I want. So it's a very fine line that you have to be very careful. Like I want them to cross, but I don't. So it's like just a little at a time they can cross. But creating the friendships or the relationships, it's hard because I'm introverted, and it probably doesn't seem that way, but I'm a very introverted individual. It's hard to uh, see social cues sometimes, but I have a degree in sociology, so I was able to like understand cultures and subcultures and how they work together.
Oh wow. Like I feel like your day job and your like your background, like overall, it kind of like you decide to take on challenges. You're like, okay, now I'm taking on these challenges, and I feel like they helped you kind of like face the like I'm not gonna call it the issue, but face the chaos, like kind of facing it directly in the face and saying like, okay, I own you now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really nice, yeah. And like people have different natures, so having like it's good because we all have our ups and downs. So it's always good to at least just be aware, okay, this is the way I am,
Hmm.
and communicate that properly with the people around you, the people that you love. And as soon as like you communicate that and people understand you, like I don't feel there should be any problem with um like however you are, like if people really understand you and if you are aware of what's going on and you have the tools to deal with whatever is going on, then like it just goes on to anybody with any downside that they have. Like,
Yeah,
because any downside, like whether, I mean, I'm not calling it a downside, but when it comes to like communication or as you said, like the self-sabotage parts of it that comes with the creativity, um, then I feel like even if you're not neurodivergent, but like let's say you have a hard time to open up to other people.
yeah,
And like if you're at least aware of that and you're communicating that to other people, that's already like 70% of the solution. But if you're unaware of it and you're just like going through the motions subconsciously, it will never be like yeah, then people will start like not understanding you because if you don't understand yourself, then other people cannot understand you.
exactly. And then I do like how you added, um, having those tools, as long as, like, I don't think people understand, but having some sort of tool when it comes to relationships, love, or, your family or whatever, having a tool to be able to communicate is so important. And a lot of people don't think, the way that they communicate, they've used a tool, but a majority of people have used a tool. They just don't know or understand that they have.
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, minorities are always seen, or in most of the cases are seen in like a negative point.
Yeah.
So like even neurodivergent people, like there are a lot of actually perks that come with it. So and people just want to look at the like chaos part of it and
Yeah.
the downside of it, but it actually comes with a lot of things that are very positive. Um, Maybe you can like mention a couple just to, like if somebody who's listening and they're not very aware of this topic or they don't know a lot about it, they can be like, oh, actually, this is quite interesting.
Yeah. So
Like
there's both
positive
sides.
perks that comes with neurodivergence, like
Yeah.
at
And
least in your
so
case.
Well, so there's a few things that I've experienced, and there's negative, the negative that I've seen with neurodivergent, and then there's a negative positive, what I like to call it, and people like to idolize. Um, you'll constantly hear people be like, "Oh, I'm just ADHD," or they idolize this situation, and it's like, well, I don't want you to idolize it. What I want you to do is recognize that yes, there it seems like someone could be a superhero with ADHD because they can do all these different tasks, but you also need to understand the underlying issues. But we do have positive perks, being neurodivergent. We can a lot, like, for myself, I can multitask, and I've learned to be able to create, get stuff done. A lot of people that are um, not diagnosed or newly diagnosed, they do have this issue of not being able to get things done. But when you start teaching yourself and you start understanding it, it's a huge positive where you can get more than one task done that you've worked on, and just the little things that matter. Understanding people on a different level too, I think, is a huge perk with neurodivergency. We For being hyperactive ADHD, and my sister-in-law is the same way. We are very on guard, constantly watching people, constantly watching people's emotions, like their facial expressions. So I think that this is a huge perk because you're able to read people better.
Yeah, like you have this sensitivity that you can really look through people and know what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And yeah, that is actually a huge plus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you for sharing. And yeah, I want to circle back to like when I said like growing up, people with ADHD or any other kind of neurodivergence feel like they're too much because that's how people make them feel. And they have this belief or like they're too complicated to love or to communicate with or to deal with. So I'm sure like a lot of our like the listeners, whether on this podcast or any or like also in your podcast, you encounter a lot of people. Um, so a lot of people struggle with this point, like they're maybe feeling they're too much or too complicated to love, especially. What would you so like what would you tell someone who feels that way, especially someone queer and neurodivergent?
Um, so if my first thing with it is if you have somebody in your life telling you that, that is a red flag. Um, you as a person are never too much or to just I've heard. people tell me you're too much or you're too chaotic or you're too this, and I cut people out when I see these red flags because I am me and I am being like my full self. This is who I am, and if people can't handle that, then I don't want them in my life because I don't want to mute. I had to do that growing up, before I came out as gay. I had to mute who I was, and anybody in this community that had to experience being in the closet for a while understands that it doesn't feel good to not be yourself. So if you are neurodivergent, be yourself. Like, you're not too much, you are just enough, and that's what matters.
Exactly. You have just not met the right person yet.
Exactly.
So, yeah. And also, like, an advice for neurotypical people, like, if you meet someone who's neurodivergent and you realize, okay, like personally, I cannot really deal with somebody who's neurodivergent, or I cannot really understand it yet. I would like to, maybe you would like to, but maybe you cannot understand it. Just try to not make the other person feel like it's their fault, it's their problem, because this is on you, and you need to recognize that and be aware, like, okay, this is just on me. I'm not capable of this yet, and I want to learn more, but I don't want to make the other person feel that they're too much or too complicated. So just be considerate and just try to, like, even if you want to step out of it, just step out of it, but knowing that, okay, this is on you, like, and it can be fine. Like, we don't have to be able to deal with all kinds of people in life,
Hmm.
but it's good to step out of it knowing, like, okay, this is me who cannot deal with it. It's not them that they're too much or too complicated. It just, I'm unfamiliar with this topic. I don't know how to, like, I don't have the capacity to be patient. Maybe you're not a patient person. Maybe, like, I don't know. It can be so many different reasons. Just be considerate as much as possible and don't make any other person feel they're too much, because it can be really hurtful sometimes, like saying, like, oh, you're too
Hmm.
much, I don't want to stay with you. And it's just sometimes like being angry with yourself that you're not able to really understand and embrace this person, so it's not on them just. And so you need to also be very, like, to clearly communicate that with the other person, so that you can avoid any kind of harm or trauma or anything. And that goes only, like, also for, like, all kinds of connections between people. If you realize there's something on you, you need to take accountability of that, and it's fine. We don't all have to be perfect.
Exactly. And if you feel like that it's something that you can't handle, someone's neurodivergent, even just, I've experienced um people tell somebody, or even myself, you're too much because, you're too flamboyant or you're too this. Well, how about you come at it a different way and say, I need to communicate to you that I'm overwhelmed. And so I need to step away from the situation. You don't have to tell somebody they're too much, because when you tell somebody they're too much, it is pretty damaging, especially if they're neurodivergent. And in most cases, at least, in America, we grow up seeing the LGBTQ group completely ignored, mistreated. So we have some self issues that we have to deal with ourselves already. You adding to that is not going to be healthy. And if you're
Exactly.
even from a part of the same community, you know what that's like. So don't do it to somebody else.
Exactly, yeah. Like, we really need to be kind to each other
Yeah.
in, like, as much as possible. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, now if you're, like, your younger self, the Skylar before writing Essence, before the podcast, um, if you could hear one piece of advice about love or self-worth today, what would it be?
For self-worth, it would be, it comes back to that, being told you're too much. You you also have this issue. I've experienced this where you feel like you're not enough. So, like, I've been told I'm too much, or I have this feeling of being not enough because I feel like I'm not providing enough of myself, or some situation that, I've been in where that feels like it's occurring. So you have this like torn part where it's like tug of war. You're back and forth of too much, not enough, too much, not enough. But the biggest one for me is always feeling like I'm not enough. And probably my younger self, I would tell like you are enough. Like you need to understand that everything that you give and everything that you put out is enough. So don't feel like you have to almost kill yourself to try harder. And it comes into that like don't people please, just be yourself, be who you are, and you are enough just doing that.
That's actually a golden sentence right there. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, and actually, this is exactly the essence of my whole program, like why I want to help people, because it all always comes back down to feeling not enough, right?
Yeah.
So, like all our issues in our lives, if I'm really going to simplify things, it comes down to feeling not enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for being here, Skylar. It was an amazing like talk. I think we can go for hours and hours
Yes.
talking about that. So yeah, if do you there is there anything else you would like to share or
I think I'm good. I had a great time. Like, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun, and just it was good to have a conversation, just an intellectual conversation about this. I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad to hear that, and I was happy you're here. So yeah, and for the listeners, thank you for listening to Ghosted, Gagged, and Gay. So if you have a story of queer love, whether it's gone wrong or right, or you have just an experience that you would like to share about that can be connected to that, I would love to hear it. I will also put there's like the link in the description of the podcast, but also I'll add it to each episode so you can book an interview with me so I can hear your story and to also inspire others or make them cry or make them laugh. So yeah, you might be my next guest. And I'll also put links to Skylar's podcasts and books and everything so you can check it out. So until then, be kind to your heart and to each other, and let's keep it queer.